Whose hands bled here? Samuel whispered, his voice trembling as his fingers traced the shallow grooves beneath the statue's base. The words slipped out before he could stop them. The air in the town square was cold and sharp, yet sweat clung to his neck. The marble under his palm was cracked, the pattern running like veins through the white stone, and at the heart of it, faint but unmistakable, were the scratches of human nails. For lines. A pause. 3 more. He pressed harder. They weren't random. They were desperate. Behind him, the mayor's assistant called out, cheerful and oblivious, "Mr. Keane, you don't need to start so early, sir. Take your time." Samuel didn't answer. He straightened, shoulders hunched from years of masonry, and stared at the statue towering above him, a polished angel holding a torch. The plaque below read, "In memory of Eliza Keane, taken too soon." His daughter's name, carved by another man's hand, on a monument built over the very place she died. They said she fell during the festival preparations 3 years ago, slipping from the scaffolding. He believed them once. But now, staring at those claw marks, he knew she hadn't fallen. She had fought. He knelt again, ignoring the pain in his knees, and pried a loose fragment of marble from a crack. The piece came free with a soft crunch, revealing a darker layer beneath. Cement mixed with red dust, faintly discolored. Blood. His hand shook. He whispered her name like a prayer. Eliza. The sound broke in his throat. Behind him, laughter from a nearby construction crew echoed through the square. They were preparing the town's annual celebration, the same festival where his daughter had died, now renamed the Day of Renewal. The irony stung. Renewal for them. Ruin for him. He closed his fist around a fragment and slipped it into his coat pocket. Later, when the square emptied, he remained, working alone under the fading light. His chisel tapped softly against stone, each strike deliberate, rhythmic, a conversation between the living and the dead. He'd told the mayor he was here to restore the statue, to fix the cracks before the ceremony. But what he was really doing was listening. The stone spoke in vibrations and silence, and Samuel, who had spent his life shaping it, could hear what others couldn't. This one screamed. By nightfall, he found what he needed. Beneath the left corner of the pedestal, he uncovered a patch where the cement had been hastily replaced. Newer, smoother. A repair. Not by him. Someone had sealed something inside. He fetched his hammer and hesitated. His hands, one steady enough to carve angels, trembled with rage. "You buried her truth," he murmured. One swing. The stone cracked again, deeper this time. Dust poured out, followed by a faint metallic glint. He reached in and pulled out a small object, a broken bracelet, bent out of shape but still recognizable. The silver locket attached to it bore the letter E. He closed his eyes, memories flooding in. Her laughter, her paint-stained fingers, the way she hugged him from behind when he worked late in his shop. That bracelet had been on her wrist the day she died. He'd buried her without it because they said it had fallen into the river. They lied. The wind howled through the square, carrying the faint toll of the church bell. He turned toward the sound and saw a figure watching from the edge of the courtyard, a tall man in a long coat, smoking under the lamplight. When Samuel looked directly at him, the man flicked a cigarette, nodded once, and walked away. His gait was familiar, controlled, arrogant. Edward Blaine, the construction head who'd overseen the festival the year Eliza died. Samuel's jaw clenched. He'd heard the rumors that she'd gone to confront someone about unsafe conditions, that she'd discovered embezzlement in the budget. But Edward had been protected by the mayor's office, declared innocent after an internal review. Samuel had believed the system then. Tonight, he believed only the stone. He packed his tools and walked home through the empty streets. His house, once warm with her laughter, now echoed with silence. Dust settled on old photographs and unfinished carvings. In the corner of his workshop stood her easel, draped in a sheet. He pulled it off. Beneath it, her last painting, an angel looking upward, one wing broken, one hand reaching out. The same angel that stood in the square. His breath hitched. She had painted it before she died. He stared at the image until the tears blurred it, then wiped his face with his sleeve. He moved to his workbench, laid down a fragment of stone, and placed the bracelet beside it. Under the weak bulb, both glimmered faintly. The proof and the promise. He opened his old tool chest, the same one he'd used for church restorations, and took out a small engraving chisel. The blade caught the light. "You wanted to make people see the truth, didn't you, Eliza?" he said softly. "Then I'll carve it where they can't look away." He began sketching on a sheet of tracing paper. The statue's base, the hidden spaces where light could catch letters if carved at the right depth and angle. He wasn't going to destroy the monument. He was going to make it remember. When morning came, he returned to the square, face calm, eyes hollow but sharp. He greeted the foreman politely, set his tools down, and resumed repairs. As a hammer tapped, he worked quietly, carving something new behind the cracks. Words no one could see yet. She didn't fall. She was pushed. He smiled faintly at the precision of it. The letters were shallow, invisible in shadow, but when light hit from the right direction, during the festival's torch ceremony, they would blaze across the base in crimson gold. The truth would shine through their lives. By sunset, he finished the first line, covering it carefully with a thin layer of plaster. As he stood, wiping sweat from his brow, he looked once more at the statue. Its marble face glowed in the fading sun, beautiful, serene, deceitful. He whispered to it, "You're done keeping their secrets." Behind him, a church bell tolled 6 times. The sound stretched through the quiet streets. Samuel turned toward the sound and saw a shadow move near the mayor's office window. Watching, waiting, he exhaled slowly, a small, grim smile forming. "Good," he muttered. "Let them watch." He picked up his tools, brushed the dust from his coat, and started home. The truth was already inside the stone. All it needed now was light. "Your hands are shaking again, old man." Edward Blaine's voice cut through the noise of the square like a knife, mocking and measured. Samuel didn't look up from the marble base. He was polishing. His chisel moved in slow, steady lines, each strike echoing the heartbeat he was trying to control. "Age does that," Samuel said softly, "but they still remember how to carve truth." Edward's smirk faded slightly. "Truth," he said, lighting a cigarette. "Truth is what people pay to believe." The smoke curled between them before he turned and walked off toward the mayor's office, boots crunching against the cobblestones. Samuel watched him go, the ember of the cigarette burning like the anger tightening in his chest. When Edward vanished from sight, Samuel turned back to the statue. The sunlight caught the marble's edges, making it gleam white and pure, a lion stone. He pressed his hand over the faint scratches he found the night before and whispered, "I'll carve you where no lie can reach." His hand slid down to the chisel again. The rhythm of his hammer changed, slower, deliberate, careful. He wasn't repairing anymore. He was engraving, but not where anyone could see. Inside the statue's base, beneath layers of polished marble, he was carving lines of words so small only he could read them now. Confessions, dates, initials. Everything they thought time had erased. Each letter felt like a heartbeat of memory. As the day wore on, the noise of the festival preparations filled the air. Banners snapping, laughter from vendors, the faint notes of a brass band rehearsing. But beneath it all, Samuel's hammer whispered secrets into the stone. At noon, he paused to stretch his aching back. A young volunteer, a boy no older than 20, brought him water. "You work like a priest, sir," the boy said with a grin. Samuel smiled faintly. "A priest listens to sins. I carve them." The boy laughed, not understanding. When he left, Samuel picked up his chisel again and began marking the next line. She tried to tell the truth. They buried her instead. The words fit perfectly into the cracks, invisible under light, but alive when shadow touched them. He had spent all morning studying how the sun crossed the statue, where the shadows fell at dusk, where the torchlight would hit during the evening festival. The hidden lines would reveal themselves only then. Truth illuminated by the fire of the same celebration that had once hidden her death. As he worked, memory crept in like the smell of rain before a storm. He could hear her voice again, gentle and stubborn. "You can't fix everything with stone, Papa." He had laughed then, carving her first sculpture for her art show, never knowing it would also be her last. His hammer slipped, nicking his knuckle. Blood. smeared across the white marble. He didn't wipe it off. He let it dry there. Her blood had stained the same ground once. Now his would join hers. By afternoon, the mayor arrived for inspection. He was a tall man with an expensive coat and a hollow smile. "Samuel, my good man," he said warmly, "the town owes you for this restoration. You've given our square dignity again." Samuel looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Dignity," he repeated. "Strange word to you for a grave." The mayor frowned slightly. "I beg your pardon?" Samuel forced a polite smile. "For this monument, I mean, it honors the dead, doesn't it?" The mayor's expression softened. "Yes, of course. Your daughter was a tragedy. The town will never forget her." Samuel nodded, gripping his chisel tighter. "No, it won't," he said. "Not after this year." The mayor patted his shoulder. "Good man," he said. "You found peace." As he walked away, Samuel whispered, "Not peace, purpose." When the square emptied again, he worked faster. Each stroke carried memory and vengeance. He traced Eliza's name along the inside rim of the foundation, right where his chisel had once touched her hair when she was a child sitting beside him, pretending to sculpt. The marble dust covered his fingers like ash, and in it he saw her face, bright, alive, unbroken. At sunset, a shadow moved across the square. A figure approached. Father Alden, the priest who had spoken at her funeral. "Samuel," he said softly, "you shouldn't tire yourself. The past is meant to rest." Samuel didn't stop carving. "The past doesn't rest, Father. It waits." The priest sighed. "She's with God now. That should be enough." Samuel looked up at him, eyes dark. "Then God can watch what I'm about to do." The priest hesitated. "What are you carving?" Samuel smiled faintly. "Her truth." Father Alden's gaze flicked toward the cracks. "Be careful what truth you reveal, Samuel. Some stones are better left unturned." Samuel's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then it's a good thing I'm not turning stones. I'm carving confessions." The priest said nothing more. He only gave a slow nod and walked away, his robes whispering against the cobblestones like fading forgiveness. Night came, and the town lights flickered on one by one. Samuel cleaned his tools. But instead of going home, he lit a small lantern and placed it beside the base. The flame flickered, reflecting faintly off the marble. The light caught one of the hidden lines, and for a split second, he saw it gleam through the plaster. They took her voice, but the stone remembers. He exhaled, trembling. "Good," he whispered. "Now you can speak when I can't." He turned to leave, but a voice from the darkness stopped him. "Beautiful work, Samuel," Edward said, stepping into the circle of lantern light. "You've given her peace, finally." Samuel's jaw tightened. "You didn't come to admire the craft." Edward smiled. "You've been digging where you shouldn't. I saw what you found. That bracelet. Dangerous thing, holding on to ghosts." Samuel's heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. "Ghosts don't scare me. They scare liars." Edward stepped closer, his tone sharpening. "Be careful, old man. You're carving history, and history can be rewritten." Samuel met his gaze. "Not in stone." They stared at each other in silence before Edward smirked and turned away. "Finish your work," he said. "The ceremony's tomorrow. Make it shine." When he was gone, Samuel looked down at his hands, still red from marble dust and blood. The chisel glinted in his grip, like a blade catching moonlight. "Oh, it'll shine," he murmured. "It'll shine brighter than any lie you've told." The lantern flickered once, sending long shadows crawling across the carved words, and for a moment the line seemed to breathe, as if the stone itself was waking to remember. "Smile for the camera, Mr. Keane. You're our miracle craftsman." The reporter's voice sliced through the noise of the festival as Samuel stood stiffly beside the statue, forcing a thin, lifeless smile. The flash went off, freezing his face beside the angel he'd rebuilt, the same angel that marked the place where his daughter had died. Children laughed in the distance, vendors shouted, and banners reading renewal and hope fluttered above the crowd. Hope! The word felt poisonous. Beneath the polished marble, under coats of false purity, truth waited. carved in the quiet precision of his final cuts. Samuel's hand still smelled of dust and steel. He could feel the vibration of the last chisel strike in his bones. It had taken him hours to finish that final line hidden beneath the surface, the one angled perfectly to catch the torchlight when the sun went down, the one that would turn beauty into accusation. Edward Blaine was here too, laughing near the mayor's table, his hand around a glass of wine as he told his well-practiced lies about safety and sacrifice. "Weary built this place for her memory," Edward said loudly, his smile shining for cameras. "Her father has given us a gift of healing." Samuel's jaw tightened. He could see it now, the arrogance, the performance, the mockery of sincerity. His daughter's murderer playing the hero while the crowd applauded. The mayor clapped Edward on the back. "You've turned tragedy into legacy, my friend. That's leadership." Samuel turned away, pretending to polish a corner of the statue base, hiding the hatred rising like bile in his throat. The letters beneath his hands were hidden now, but alive. He whispered under his breath, "You turned murder into business. Tonight, I'll turn your pride into confession." A soft voice broke his focus. "Mr. Keane?" He looked up. It was Lily, the volunteer boy's sister, barely 20, eyes bright with innocence. She held a candle and a small bouquet of white flowers. "The mayor asked me to place these at the statue before the ceremony begins. For Eliza." The sound of his daughter's name caught him off guard. No one in town spoke it aloud anymore. He nodded slowly. "She like that," he said, his voice cracking. She knelt and laid the flowers gently against the base, right where his hidden carvings slept. Her candlelight flickered across the marble, and for the briefest second, Samuel thought he saw one word glimmer faintly: truth. She smiled at him, unaware. "You carved her face beautifully," she said softly. "She looks free." He swallowed hard. "She will be," he whispered. As night approached, the crowd grew denser. Lanterns lit every corner of the square, warm golden light spilling over polished stone and laughing faces. The church bell tolled 7 times. The ceremony would begin at 8. Samuel's heart beat with the precision of a craftsman's clock, each chime bringing him closer to justice. He sat on the edge of the fountain, watching the torches being arranged around the monument, the same type of torches that once burned during the night his daughter died. He remembered that night in painful clarity, the screaming, the crowd scattering, the official statements claiming she lost balance. No one spoke of the argument she had with Edward earlier that day. No one mentioned how she threatened to expose the misuse of funds or the faulty scaffolding that had killed 2 workers before her. She had carried the truth. They had silenced it. But tonight, the truth would speak louder than their festival drums. The mayor took the stage, his voice booming through the speakers. "Tonight, we celebrate renewal. We celebrate how tragedy can be turned into beauty through unity, through hard work, through good men like Edward Blaine and Samuel Keane." Applause erupted. Samuel didn't clap. His eyes locked on Edward, who stood by the front row, pretending humility as he nodded to the crowd. "Good men," Samuel muttered. "Good at lying." As the speeches dragged on, he stood and moved closer to the statue. No one noticed. Everyone's eyes were on the stage. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small matchbox, old and worn. Inside, a single match, the one he'd been saving for 3 years. He struck it against the box, and the tiny flame flared. He bent down and lit the first of the torches near the base, pretending to assist the organizers. The fire caught quickly, golden and calm, spreading from one to the next in perfect rhythm, until all 8 torches surrounding the statue blazed at once. The crowd cheered. The light grew stronger. The marble glowed white, and then, as the flames reached their peak, something changed. The carved lines Samuel had hidden beneath the surface began to appear in the heat. At first, faint cracks, then shapes, then letters, dark veins crawling across the angel's pedestal. The illusion was subtle but growing. Murmurs started in the crowd. "What's that?" someone whispered. The mayor turned, confusion spreading on his face. Under flickering light, the words began to take form, one line at a time, glowing faintly from within the stone. She didn't fall. She was pushed. Gasps rippled through the square. The mayor's microphone screeched with feedback. Cameras flashed wildly. Edward's smile faltered. The firelight made the angel's face appear almost alive, her eyes shadowed as if weeping. More words surfaced. The men who built her grave stand beside her now. People stepped back, whispers swelling into panic. Is this some kind of trick? The mayor barked, glaring at Samuel. The old man stood silently before the statue, the torches reflecting in his eyes like a storm of memories. No trick, he said quietly. Just truth. Edward pushed through the crowd, his face pale. You crazy old man, he hissed. You'll destroy everything. Samuel looked at him and smiled faintly. Not destroy. Reveal. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing. The engraved words were visible now for all to see, the story carved into marble itself. Names, dates, payments, every secret Edward thought buried. He's insane, Edward shouted. But the crowd wasn't looking at Samuel anymore. They were looking at him. The whispers turned to accusations. The mayor stepped back, eyes wide. Edward's hand trembled as he tried to cover one of the carved lines, but the stone burned faintly under his palm, leaving him shaking. She told you the truth, Samuel said softly, voice carrying in the quiet. You buried her for it. Now the light buries you. The crowd fell into stunned silence. The torches crackled, their light dancing across the angel's broken wings. Samuel took a slow step back, staring up at the statue that now seemed to breathe with life. His daughter's face, her real face, was reflected in the stone's glow. You can rest now, he whispered. Then, as if answering, a gust of wind swept through the square, snuffing out half the torches at once. The remaining flames flickered low, casting long shadows over the words that would never fade again. Samuel turned away and walked toward the edge of the square. Behind him, shouts began, questions, denials, the unraveling of power. But he didn't look back. The truth was no longer his to carry. It had found its voice in stone, and the night was only beginning to listen. Turn off those lights, the mayor screamed, but his voice was drowned by the murmurs rising through the square. The crowd had frozen, hundreds of faces bathed in gold firelight, staring at the angel statue that was no longer just marble. The carved words, invisible before, now burned through the stone like veins of truth illuminated by flame. She didn't fall. She was pushed. Beneath that, more lines shimmered into focus. Names, dates, amounts. Initials etched so precisely that even from the stage, every guilty man could see his own mark staring back at him. Edward Blaine's hand trembled around the microphone. This is vandalism, he stammered, trying to laugh. But the sound was thin, cracking under fear. The old man's lost his mind. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. The festival's joyous music had stopped. The only sound now was the soft, accusing crackle of the torches. Samuel stood near the base of the monument, his shadow stretching tall and still. His face was unreadable, his eyes locked on the angel above, the same design his daughter once painted, now reborn as her final voice. A woman in the crowd whispered, "It's her name, Eliza Keane. The marks are hers." Another gasped, "Oh my God, those initials match the town council list." The ripple of realization spread fast. Samuel finally spoke, his voice steady, deep, carried like a confession that didn't need a priest. You built your pride on her grave. You carved your glory into her silence. I only return the favor. The mayor stepped forward, sweat glistening on his temple. "Mr. Keane, stop this. You're making a scene." "No," Samuel said sharply, eyes rising to meet his. "I'm making history." He stepped closer to the light, his hands shaking but sure. 3 years ago, my daughter told you about the stolen funds, the unsafe scaffolds, the lies you buried. You called her hysterical. You called her careless. And when she died, you called it an accident. I called it faith. I believed in your justice. His voice cracked, then hardened again. Tonight, I don't believe anymore. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush breath. A reporter shouted from the back, "Mr. Blaine, did you approve those construction changes?" The ones Eliza reported. Edward's face went pale. "That's absurd," he snapped. "She was emotional, unstable." "No," Samuel cut in, the single word slicing through him. "She was brave. You were afraid of her truth." He reached into his pocket and held up the silver bracelet, bent, blood-stained, engraved with the letter E. "You hid this inside her statue. You sealed her last scream in stone." Gasps erupted. Cameras zoomed closer. Edward stumbled back, bumping into the mayor. "He's lying. He must have put it there himself. Then break it open," Samuel said calmly, stepping aside. "Let them see what else you buried." The crowd murmured louder now, voices of doubt, guilt, and awakening. Police officers hesitated on the sidelines, unsure whom to protect. Samuel turned back to the monument, his expression softening. "This was supposed to honor her," he said quietly, mostly to himself. "Now it finally does." He touched the angel's hand, cold stone against trembling flesh, and looked up. "You can rest, Eliza. They hear you now." The torches flickered suddenly as a gust of wind swept through the square, making the flames bend toward the men on the stage. For a fleeting second, the burning light painted their faces red like judgment. The mayor turned to Edward, hissing through his teeth. "You said it was handled." Edward's voice broke. She fell, I didn't." But the crowd had already turned. They weren't celebrating anymore. They were demanding answers. People began chanting, voices overlapping, angry and desperate. "Tell the truth. Tell the truth." Samuel took a slow step back, his eyes glistening. He didn't raise his hands, didn't shout. He simply watched as a town that had forgotten his daughter now burned with her memory. The first tear slipped down his cheek, not of grief, but release. For the first time in 3 years, he felt her presence not as pain, but as purpose fulfilled. Behind him, the statue gleamed brighter, the carved letters glowing as if alive. The heat from the torches caused thin cracks to appear along the marble's base, and a faint sound echoed, the soft, breaking whisper of stone releasing what had held too long. From inside, something metallic clinked and rolled free, a small envelope sealed in wax, falling at the mayor's feet. He bent to pick it up, trembling. When he tore it open, the contents spilled out, copies of the original safety reports Eliza had written. Her handwriting, clear as the day she'd vanished. Stamped, signed, ignored. The cameras flashed again. Reporters screamed. The truth was no longer speculation. It was proof. Samuel stood motionless as chaos erupted. Shouts, arguments, the crackle of police radios. Edward tried to run, but was blocked by the crowd closing in, shouting his name like a curse. The mayor dropped the papers, his mouth opening and closing, no words left. Samuel looked up at the sky. The stars faint, the night heavy with smoke and sound. "She told you," he whispered, "and you buried her words under marble. But marble remembers." He took one last look at the statue, his daughter's angel glowing against the night, its broken wings shining like truth reborn. He turned to walk away, slow but steady, the crowd's noise fading behind him. As he reached the edge of the square, the church bell struck midnight, one slow, echoing note that carried through every street. The torches flickered, and for a moment, the entire monument seemed to breathe before the last line of light faded into silence. Samuel paused, his hand brushing the bracelet in his pocket. His voice was barely audible, carried only by the wind. "They'll remember you now, my girl." Behind him, sirens wailed, cameras flashed, and the statue stood unshaken, an eternal witness to justice finally carved in stone. Make sure to like this channel, subscribe, and enjoy the videos.